We are going to get started. This is a long meditation. Usually the last Thursday of the month, we do a little bit of a longer meditation. Our long meditation is not a very long meditation, but compared to how long many people meditate for, this is going to seem like torture. Back in the old days in Michigan, 15 years ago, we used to do long meditation was more like 45 minutes or so. Our long meditation is closer to a half an hour because the whole class is only 45 minutes. But if you are struggling to sit, just focus on the posture. And a lot of that is going to just have to do with your leg position and your back. We've been talking a lot about the back position, both like strengthening and having a healthy posture with your shoulders in the right position and all of that, and also your balance. So we've been talking about it in Tai Chi and in Kung Fu, like you're not leaning, you're not slouching, you're not tilting. And in meditation, this is super important as well. Partly because if you slouch, you're more likely to fall asleep and then you're not meditating, and or your body will start to hurt. And your meditation is hard enough without your body really hurting. It's hard enough where everything is in the right position and feels great. But if your hip starts to hurt or your back starts to hurt and you feel like you have to move, then that's messing you up. So if you have to move, it's almost like restarting. So try to keep yourself totally still when you're meditating. If you do absolutely have to move, then do it quickly and quietly and come right back to the position. So I'm not just going to talk about sitting position, but we'll get into that a little bit more when we actually sit to meditate. I'm going to talk about, I got a real thin topic for tonight, and I don't know how far it's going to get me, but I was trying to come up with what to talk about today and taking it from the question of the week, as I sometimes do. It's not a lot to go on. The question of the week is how can you be a better person today? And of course, we could talk about so many different things with this, but it's just not very specific. There's not a lot of meat on this. So I'm going to talk about why it's kind of a silly question, which is always one of my favorite topics. So first of all, what does it mean to be a better person? Exactly, that's the problem. We don't know what that means. It's different for different people, and it should be. Not everybody should agree on exactly, what the ideal person is. I think most of us can agree on some basic principles, and there are some things that most people will strive for, but then there's a whole lot of gray area and wishy-washy stuff. It's a very subjective thing. What does it mean to be, a better person? And there's usually this kind of morality or ethics kind of connotation to it. Like, are you a good person or are you a garbage person? Are you like doing the right thing or are you just worthless? And I'm not even trying to get into any of that, because that kind of judgment, self-judgment or judging other people, is a big part of what we are trying to get beyond with our meditation. Letting go of those kinds of attachments and judgments, because if your mind is filled with judgment, it's filled with thought, and you're not meditating, you're just sitting there judging yourself. And bless you, that's going to happen in your meditation. You're going to be sitting and you're going to have a thought and you're going to start judging yourself, and you're going to say, how come I'm so bad at this? I've been meditating for so long. I've been meditating for 3 months and I still can't sit here and just not think at all. That thought never goes away. I've been meditating for almost, I think it's been 22, 23 years now, every single day, and I still have thoughts. But what I've learned to do really well is to just let go of the judgment. And there are a lot of different ways that you can do this in meditation. Meditation, it is, for example, you can just recognize the thought and just label it as thought. It's not good thought. It's not bad thought. I'm not good person for not having thoughts. I'm not bad person for having too many thoughts. It's just thought, okay? It's like you see something that is driving across the window and you think car. It's not, that's the car that I wish that I had. It's just car, and it's very clear, and that's the end of it, right? And just like that car just drives off into the distance and you can no longer see it, that's what you want to happen to your thought. You label it as thoughts. There's no extra feeling about it. You're not making yourself wrong for having it. It just goes, it disappears. So this is one way of thinking about improving ourselves. How can I be a better person today is just by meditating. And I'll tell you my personal secret. This does not necessarily work for everybody, but it works really well for me. I have a very simple secret to being happy, and it is lowered expectations. All I have to do to be happy is meditate and do or teach martial arts. That's it. And I do all of those things every day, and everything else is a bonus or doesn't matter to me, right? Get in a car accident, still a good day. I meditated and I taught or I did martial arts. Ate too much, drank too much, still a good day. I meditated, I did martial arts. So if we can start to have that kind of mindset about our practice, then we've really got something, right? Meditating is great. Being able to clear our minds is great. Being able to have a disciplined mind, being able to be calmer and all that stuff is wonderful. But part of the way that our happiness comes from our practice is not just by sitting there and having happy thoughts. That does help, and that will probably happen more often when you meditate and you're able to let go of the stuff that you don't want to have. But it's by recognizing all of the desire and extra thought and just extra stuff that usually we're caught up in when we're thinking about this idea of being a better person. If you have been in the dojo recently, you've heard me talk so much about setting goals. This is a great idea. We want to set goals, and we don't want to be attached to it going a specific way. So if you set your goal, and let's say that your goal is to meditate every day for the whole year, and you've already missed a day, then many people start to get upset by that. Most people give up completely. They say, all right, well, I'm done this year, but I'll start trying again next year. Then I'll meditate. That all happens, all of that kind of extended failure happens because we were stuck on it being a certain way. So this is like a distinction I like to make is between attachment and commitment. If you're committed to something, you could get kind of bumped off your path, but then you just come right back to it. Attachment is it has to be a very specific thing, a very certain way. And this is the way to unhappiness, because you will never get exactly what you want, exactly the way that you want it. So what you'll get is what you need, which is often something that's going to cause you to have to let go of that specific desire. So being a better person, you might have a very specific idea of what this looks like. I've had a couple of people in my life where I thought I've got to be exactly like that person, or I'm not, doing it right. My Sifu still is a very strong, great example for me, and I strive to be like him in a lot of different ways. But I had to recognize after I tried teaching martial arts exactly like him and failing, I'm not the same person as him. I shouldn't be, and we should never try to be exactly like anybody else. But we've got clear examples of something to shoot for, right? So when I first walked into the dojo almost 25 years ago, I encountered Sifu Brown and took the class. I heard, actually, I think the first time I went there, I listened to him give a martial arts or a meditation talk. And I'm like, he's so dynamic. He's so amazing at speaking. He's got such a way about him. And those classes, by the way, usually had like 80 people in them. So we're working on it. We're well on our way. If we keep incrementally improving like we have from last week to this week, we'll be there in no time. But I was not that person at all. And I thought I want to be able to speak in front of people like that someday. I want a room full of people to listen to me, or a room of one or two people and people online to listen to me. And I was like, I got to be exactly like him. I even started to kind of talk more like him. I got a lot more volume. I got more exciting and dynamic and all of that. And there's a limit to that. I got pretty far by trying to like exactly mimic somebody else. And then I realized a couple of years into it, like that's not exactly me, and it shouldn't be. So what is that? I'm not attached to it. I'm kind of committed to it. So I have a direction that I'm aiming for. And there's like a feeling to it. There's a way that I know feels better, feels more right, a version of myself where I feel more like in touch with what's really important to me, where I feel more powerful or empowered. And there's a lot of extra stuff. It's like I don't have to have my hair cut exactly like him. It's a funny story because when I first went into the dojo, Sifu Brown had a long ponytail, and he grew it because he always thought that guys with long hair looked sloppy, and he thought, I'm going to try that out so that I can get rid of that, like let go of that judgment. And I, for years, every time I saw somebody with a man bun, I'm like, what is this? Who is this guy trying to be? This is ridiculous. And then, of course, I had to eventually grow my own to see what it was like, what all the rage is, and then I cut it off. So you never saw me with the man bun. You're lucky, Bijan. And so you know, I could talk around this for forever, but what we have is something to shoot for. In the Prophet, Khalil Gibran gives this wonderful analogy of what it is to be a great parent. And he says, being a great parent, I'm going to totally paraphrase, it's a beautiful poem, but he says, it's like you draw back the bowstring and your child is the arrow and you let it loose, right? You aim it and then you just let it go and you let it fly. And of course, you can imagine if you like tried to chase the arrow and like pushed it into exactly the right spot as it's flying through the air, it's going to fall down and mess up. So we shouldn't do that with our kids. We shouldn't do that with any real part of us. And it's because with that overanalyzation and trying to force things, trying to make it go exactly the way that you want it to go according to your attachments, it will never happen, right? So you just let it go. You pull back the string of your goal, of the direction that you're aiming for. You let the arrow fly and see where it lands and kind of enjoy the process of just watching it go. So with our meditation, this is one of the things that we practice. We practice, you know, we pull back our bowstring and we aim our arrow at great meditation with very few thoughts and just sitting still, rock solid like a mountain. And then all the other stuff happens, right? Our arrow kind of is sailing in that direction, but it kind of veers off and we have a thought. And so we practice just letting it go. And on some level, meditation is a wonderful practice of just moment by moment letting go of attachments. You have a thought, you want to get attached to it because it's the most exciting thing right now because you're just sitting still and breathing. So you want to hold on to that thought and then you just let it go. And then sometimes you'll have like a super important thought where you swear, if it were any other thought, you could let it go, but not this one. This one, I've got to hold on to it. It's so important that I remember what I'm making for lunch tomorrow. And you can, even those thoughts you can let go of. So when we practice letting go, and then we just come back to the center, come back to the breath, come back to just the feeling of the breath coming in and leaving your body. And during a long meditation, you're going to have so many opportunities to do this because your mind will wander so many times. And that's not really at that question. The question is, do you recognize it or not? You might get to the end of our half-hour meditation and think like, my mind didn't wander the entire time. That was incredible. I must be a Buddha. what's happened is you probably didn't notice the 100 or 1,000 times that your mind did wander during meditation. So try to recognize it as quickly as you can and let it go as quickly as you can. Without judgment, just say thoughts, come back to the breath, and in that moment, in this present moment where there's nothing in the way, it's just you and the breath in the moment, that's where happiness is. That's where the best version of yourself is. Your highest self is when there's nothing in the way. Sit comfortably. I'll leave everybody online. If you want to practice meditating with us tonight, leave this light on for a sec while I explain posture. So I sit in Seiza. You can sit cross-legged. Just make sure that your knees are even with or below your thighs. If your knees are sticking way up, your legs will fall asleep, or worse than that, you'll get like the pins and needles, and it's going to be very painful. So your hands are upturned at the hips. You can have them together, you can have them separate, but if your arms are starting to slide down, now you're slouching. And as we said before, this is bad posture. So your shoulders are going to roll back and your chin is parallel to the ground. If you start to go like this during your meditation, you're probably falling asleep. And part of the problem is your back is not engaged enough. So have that good straight spine. Close eyes, have your eyes slightly raised up to the point between your eyebrows. Make sure that your eyes are not crossed. So if you start to get a headache during meditation, it is likely that your eyes are crossed. And the way that I will encourage you to get your eyes in the correct posture tonight is to just imagine the point on your forehead just between your eyebrows and maybe just above that, and just actually visualizing that place on your forehead that will cause your eyes to naturally raise up slightly. So that's a difference between being attached, where you have kind of this tension. You're really trying to stare at exactly that spot. Instead, you just let that tension go and just imagine, just visualize that place on your forehead, and the eyes will naturally rise up to meet that level, slightly raised gaze. So we'll begin with a breathing exercise. Start with all the breath out, breathing in through the nose. Hold it at the top for 3 seconds. And breathe out. You can breathe out through the nose or the mouth. In from the belly. Hold it at the top. And out. In. Hold. Out. In. Hold. Out. Make sure you're completely exhaling every time. In. Hold. Out. We're halfway done. We're going to do 5 more. Try to slow it down and deepen the breath. In. Hold. Out. In. Hold. Out. In. Hold. Out. In. Hold. Out. All right, last breath in. Try to make sure your spine is straight, your shoulders are back, you have good posture. Hold it at the top. And finish with a double exhale. Now just let the breath come in and let the breath go out. So now you're letting go of trying to do anything. You're no longer trying to control the breath. You're just feeling the breath. And it's like you are observing the breath and observing the thoughts from the outside. Your mind wanders to something else. You gently let go of that thought and bring it back to the breath. And try to have that sensation of the breath completely fill your consciousness, fill your awareness. When a thought arises, you just label it as thought and let it go. If you notice that you're really struggling, you have lots of thoughts and a busy mind, then you can go back to counting the breath 5 times and then let it go again.